pretty much if I would have gone to the doctor and been tested positive, I would have been stuck in Thailand and everyone else would have left. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I'd just do kind of like a different kind of video. I just thought I'd sit down and do a little story time for you guys. Yeah, I'm just gonna tell you about my experience and my time in Asia in the beginning of 2020. Okay, so let's just start the video. Okay, so I don't even know where to begin. Pretty much, let me just set the scenes. This is the beginning of 2020, so like January of 2020, and I have been a part of a performing arts college / group called the Young Americans. The point of the college is so then you can go out and do music outreach tours all across the world. So like you go to the college and then after like your first or second year, they can start touring and doing workshops with kids. It's a really great time. So I was going on a tour in the spring, so the spring of 2020. So how it works kind of is, so like there's a bunch of different tours, so like each tour season, so like fall, spring, and summer is a tour season. Each season there's a couple tours that go out, so like usually there's one in the US that goes out and it's like in a specific region of the United States, and then in the fall there'll be a tour that goes to Japan, and then there'll be a tour that goes to, I don't know, like the UK maybe, or Europe. So it's like a cast of like 40 people, usually ranging from like 18 to like 23, 24, like that age. So it's usually like 20 girls, 20 boys, give or take. It kind of depends. And so pretty much we like go out on the road and we tour. So that's kind of how that works. And usually it's kind of like set where like the towns we go to are towns we've kind of already been established in, like we've gone there before. But then every like year or so they send out what's called like a world tour, and the point of that tour is kind of to branch out into different places that we haven't really been to before, to get contacts in new schools and new countries and stuff like that. So like in the past they've gone to like Australia and New Zealand, and one time they even went to Africa, which is like so amazing. But the world tour that I got put on was, it was technically called World Tour, but it was pretty much, we should have called it like Asia Tour. So it was pretty much we were gonna go to a bunch of different countries in Asia. So it was kind of like a different tour than normal, but yeah, that's the tour I was put on. Okay, so our first stop was gonna be Hong Kong. It's actually funny, well, it's not funny, but it's like crazy looking back, because at the time, you probably don't even remember this because it's kind of hard to remember anything that happened pre-COVID, like in the news and stuff. But at the beginning of the year in January, it was all over the news. There was protesters in Hong Kong. It's kind of complicated, but to my understanding, so if you don't know, Hong Kong is actually not China, and it's okay if you didn't know that, because I did not know that before I went to Hong Kong. But Hong Kong used to be part of China, and then they split up like a long time ago, and so Hong Kong is like its own, so like, okay, here's mainland China, and then Hong Kong is an island like outside of China, but it's its own country. And I don't really know the full details on what they were protesting about, but anyways, they were protesting. And it's just crazy to think, because at the beginning of our tour we were all kind of scared, and there was even talk of not going to Hong Kong because of the protesters, because it was like this scary thing, like they could end up being violent and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just crazy to think that like that was the reason we thought we were gonna not be able to go on this tour. But little did we know. We go to Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is literally amazing, like one of my favorite places I've ever been in my whole life. It's just so, it's so cool. And it actually ended up that like the protesters were fine. I mean, there were definitely still protests, and it's kind of crazy, like when we went there we had all these rules that we had to follow. Like we couldn't go outside in all black, because like that's what the protesters wore, and like if you can't get close to the protesters and all this stuff. But we spent like a week or so in Hong Kong, and so pretty much how it works is we stay with people's families. That's how we tour. The normal way is to have a 3-way workshop, and on the last day you do a show with the kids, but we stay with families. So like every 3 days we'd be in a different household in a different city kind of thing. So I just remember being at a homestay, and my homestay mom being like, oh yeah, did you hear about like this sickness? And like I was like, no, I didn't hear about it, because like it was literally January, none of us had really heard about it yet. And they're like, yeah, there's a couple people I know that are sick, and apparently it's really bad. But you know, and I remember at the time it did feel kind of eerie. I don't know, I didn't think too much about it, but the time that I did think about it, I just remember having this really weird feeling about it. So then after that I didn't really think about it anymore after that, because it was kind of just, I don't know, not that big of a deal yet that we knew about. So then we left Hong Kong, and the next place we went was Malaysia. Yeah, I think we went to Malaysia next. That was fine. We didn't spend too much time in Malaysia, and we're hearing about the virus a little bit more, but not like, it's nothing super alarming to us at all. After Malaysia, we had a layover in Singapore, I think. We flew out of Singapore because Singapore and Malaysia are like right next to each other. Like the homestay I was at, you could literally see Singapore from like across the water. So yeah, we flew out of Singapore and then we landed in Bangkok, and this is where the story really actually begins. So at this point, we were told we had to wear masks on the plane to Bangkok, and to me, of course, that was really weird. The other thing about Bangkok, if you don't know anything about that city, is so in Thailand, Bangkok is the only city in the whole country of Thailand. Like they obviously have other, like, I guess I don't know if you would call them villages. I'll have to look up what you actually call them, but like other towns and stuff, but Bangkok is the city. And so it is very different than the US. Out of all the places I've been, Bangkok was probably one of the biggest like culture shocks in a way. Like it's so different. The air quality there is really bad, and when we first got there, they wanted us to wear masks. So a lot of the times in Bangkok, school will get canceled and events will get canceled because the air quality is just so bad there. Like it's dangerous. At that point, we were like, okay, that's gonna be our biggest concern in Bangkok is the air quality. So again, little did we know. So we kind of had some workshops get canceled because they couldn't have school because the air quality was so bad there. And other things about Bangkok specifically, this is not like all of Thailand, but just Bangkok. I think because it's the only city, it's very closely packed. Like everything I feel like is like sucked in and like very close. There's just a lot of people, and it's even been called an unwalkable city because unfortunately there are a lot of homeless people in Bangkok. Anywhere you go, you're pretty much gonna see a homeless person in the street. It's just hard to move around in the city, I guess, for a lot of reasons. We actually ended up spending maybe like a month, a little bit less than a month in Bangkok because it was a new city that we had been to, like a new place. We didn't have a lot of contacts there and we didn't have a lot of place to stay. So we stayed mainly in this kind of hotel place. A lot of our workshops got canceled, so we just had a lot of free time, and they started getting canceled, of course, because of COVID and because of the air quality and just a lot of things. The way transportation works in Bangkok is again very different than anywhere that I've ever been to. So pretty much there's a couple different ways. So the first one is walking, like a lot of people do, just have to walk everywhere. Number two is taxis, so just like your normal taxi that you would think of. A lot of people use taxis. And then the next one is they have like these motorcycles, and they're like motorcycle taxis. So pretty much like you stand in this long line and then you kind of wait for one of the motorcycle people to come, and then you just hop on the back of that motorcycle and you ride off into the sunset. And then the other way, which is my personal favorite, and it's really fun, they have these things called tuk-tuks, but they're pretty much like a little, I'll put a picture, but it's like a little tiny car, and like it's open in the back, and almost it's like the bed of a truck, or sometimes it has a top on it, but a lot of the times it doesn't even have a top, and you just ride in it, and that one's really fun. And then the last way is trains, and that is the main way of transportation we took as like a group. We took the trains a lot. And again, if you've never been on a train or you've only been on a train in the United States, it is so different. They pack those trains so tight. Like you have to be aggressive on these trains pretty much. Like I have literally been squished so hard that I have been like lifted up. Like that's how tight these trains are. So we were taking these trains, and of course COVID was getting worse and we were hearing a lot more about it, and so at this point we had to wear masks all the time. And also another thing about Thailand is it is very hot, and not only is it hot, it is humid, like so humid. You step outside and you are wet, kind of humid, like on your body. It's pretty nasty. Pretty much like anytime we were going anywhere, we had to be stuffed on these trains. We were wearing a mask, which I'm not going to complain about wearing a mask because I know that it works, and I know like I'm definitely pro mask. I hate that that's even a thing. I hate that I even have to say that, but But yeah, no, it was just really, really uncomfortable because we were wearing these masks and it was so, so hot. And then also we're like stuffed on these trains with people literally like right next to you. So that was kind of rough. And like I said, the talk of COVID was definitely getting to be like a more serious thing, like a very, very serious thing we were starting to find out. And of course, it was only in Asia at the time, or so we thought. It probably was other places too, but the media and the general public only thought it was in Asia. We weren't very educated on what COVID actually was at the time because obviously it was a new virus. Everyone was kind of writing the playbook as it went. No one really knew much about it. And so at that point, all you would hear about was like people dying from it and everyone getting super, super sick. And so at this point, it was all of our knowledge that it was like, if you got it, you were gonna die pretty much. That was the only outcome of COVID. And so that was really scary. Like there were so many nights where I just cried. Like I just was in that room. Like I can just picture it so well right now. Like I was just in that room, just crying myself to sleep because I was genuinely so scared and I wanted to go home so bad. So then a couple days later, my best friend and my roommate in that hotel we were staying at gets sick. She starts having like a really, really bad cough and like is having a fever, and we were all scared, and she was scared of course too, because at that time in Thailand there was kind of like a mandate that anyone who had a fever had to go to the hospital. That was like the law at that time. She was really hesitant on like telling people that she wasn't feeling good. It pretty much came down to like one night she was so sick and she had such a bad fever and just couldn't even get up from her bed. And I was like you have to go to the doctor. You have to go, you know? It was just such a sad night because I wanted to go with her so bad because I felt so bad for her and so scared for her because it's a scary thing, especially being in a foreign country, and like, I don't know, it was just scary. Yeah, they took her to the hospital and I just remember, I feel so dramatic now, but I went back to my room and I just like started bawling and crying. I was like, she's gonna die. Yeah, they took her, and then I found this out later. When they took her to the hospital, they took her phone, they took her, like they took all of her clothes because it could be like contaminated, I don't know. They took all of her belongings and then they put her in like a hospital gown kind of thing, and then they had to quarantine her for 12 hours before they even could run any tests on her and like even assess her. So this poor girl is in this foreign hospital in Bangkok. She is stripped of all her things, doesn't even have her phone to like communicate with anyone, in this bubble. Yeah, after like that 12 hours, then they finally started to like assess her and give her tests and stuff, and they tested her for COVID and it actually came back negative. But I'm a little bit skeptical of this because I mean this was literally in February and who knows how accurate that test was, and just it seems like with all the circumstances, the fact that she was sick and didn't have it just seemed a little odd. She had this like rash under her armpit and they kind of like pretty much said that it was that, like that's why she was sick, is because she had this rash under her armpit. I don't really know. And then she finally came back, but then a couple days later, who else gets sick? Me. I get so sick. The kind of sick that I have never been in my life. Like I had the most awful cough, the worst cough I've probably had ever in my life. And I was feverish, I had chills, I had a pounding headache. Anytime I like moved my head or stood up, I could barely do it. We didn't want to take me to the hospital because pretty much we didn't have that much time left in Bangkok. I think we were going to be there for like another week or a week and a half. Pretty much if I would have gone to the doctor and been tested positive, I would have been stuck in Thailand and everyone else would have left, and that would have been terrifying, like actually horrible. So it was kind of like, do you either want to go get tested and be positive and be stuck here, or do you just want to try to ride it out and hope you don't die? At one point they had to move me and Maggie, my friend, because we were both still sick and everyone else was at a workshop, so they had to move me and Maggie to a homestay by ourselves. And the struggle of that, okay, so I was like very, very ill. Like I still had fevers at this point, I was coughing, my headache, I could barely even stand up, and I had to lug all of my suitcase, so like my big suitcase, and I had a small suitcase, and then I had a backpack and some other stuff. I had to lug all of that stuff out of the hotel room. So it was very, very hot and humid. I was like lugging all this stuff around. We had to get in this taxi cab, and I was getting so car sick because they definitely don't drive like people drive here. Like it's definitely a little bit crazier. I felt like this was like a weird hazy dream. Like that's how out of it I was. I was so sick. And then we had to get out of the taxi cab because the cab couldn't bring us to like our actual place we were going. They had to drop us off somewhere else. So I'm like lugging my suitcase and like it's so hot and I'm sweating and I don't even know how I made it there, but like somehow we made it to the place and I felt like we were walking for like an hour, but it probably wasn't that long. Like somehow we got in the school and I just laid in our room on the ground until I could get picked up by my homestay. So I was just like laying there dead. And then eventually my homestay picked me up and I remember like kind of having to like lie that I was not sick because obviously if I was sick they wouldn't have taken me in, but I didn't have anywhere else to go. And so I just remember sitting there at the dinner table and like trying not to cough, like being like holding in my cough so hard so that they wouldn't know I was sick. I was sick for probably like 2.5 weeks straight. That time in Thailand for me was so miserable, and it's so sad because I know that Thailand is such a beautiful place, but it's just just like the circumstances were so bad because I was in a really weird place in life in that moment for like a couple weeks, and I was so happy to leave. Like I wanted to leave so bad. Like I just remember going to the airport, driving to the airport and just being so happy. Like I never truly believed I was gonna leave that country. I thought I was gonna be stuck in that country forever, and I was like, I'm not gonna believe it until I literally am out of this country on the plane flying away. So then we were supposed to go to South Korea, but that had to get canceled because of COVID, and then so we flew straight to Japan. I had been to Japan before, so it wasn't anything like crazy and new. Every day we were getting new updates on what stage Japan was in at the time, and like our last day in Japan was, I don't know the actual date. I'll find the date and put it in. We were gonna have a day off before our next workshop, and we actually went to this island in Japan, and it's like my favorite place in Japan ever. They have like deer there, like tame deer, like they're wild deer, but they're tame, and they just walk around the city with you, and there's all these temples, and it's just, it doesn't even seem real, this place. And we were gonna spend the night on that island and then go back onto the mainland and do a workshop or something. Remember, we were all standing there waiting to go to our like hotel for the night, and our company manager pulls us over and just tells us that we're going home. We all kind of knew that that was gonna happen, and like we weren't surprised, but it was still a shock. And it was so weird. Like we all just started crying because for a lot of us that was our last tour. A lot of us, we were gonna be done with the group. I mean, little did we know it was everyone's last tour, not by choice, but it ended up being everyone's last tour. But the people that had already decided it was gonna be their last tour, it was really sad because we had performed our last show and we didn't know that was gonna be our last show ever in our life, done our last workshop, and we didn't know that was gonna be our last workshop ever. And it was just a really weird and sad moment, and we all just kind of split up and were staring out into the water just crying and being all dramatic. So they told us like, we're gonna stay here tomorrow, you have a day off tomorrow, and then we're gonna go to the airport and fly home. And so that last day in Japan, I mean, that was probably my favorite day ever in Japan. Like on that whole tour, that was my favorite day because it just felt so surreal, and it just felt so like we wanted to appreciate and take everything in because we didn't know if we'd ever come back. We didn't know when we'd ever see our friends ever again, because everyone in this group is from around the country and around the world. Like we're not all from the same place, so it was like, when are we ever gonna see each other again? Because you get really close to these people because you're touring with them for, it could be 3 to 5 months. Yeah, you get super close to them because music really truly does bring people together, and so you have like this emotional connection with them that you just can't have with anyone else. Of course, we didn't know really what was gonna happen. We thought when we were gonna get back to the US we were gonna be safe and everything was gonna be okay again. It's just crazy how fast things have changed because like we got into the country so easily, like just so easily, but all we had to do was like fill out this paper saying that we had not been in China and that we hadn't been around like livestock or something. I don't know, it was weird. And then they just like let us in the country, and then we pretty much had to quarantine for 2 weeks in California before we could go home. I came home, and it was just so weird because at the time there were obviously not a lot of cases in the US. So once I got home, we had to tell the CDC that I had been in Asia and I got home and all this stuff, and the head person of the CDC would literally call me every day and ask me my symptoms, ask me everything, like ask me how I was doing. And it's just crazy that that happened because obviously that would never happen today, like there's too many and it would never be that like personal, and so that was kind of a weird thing that happened. But yeah, that's kind of my story. It was a really weird and bizarre thing to literally be in Asia when this whole thing was happening. Okay, so then the other reason why I think I had it is because my boyfriend just had it, like he just got over it a couple days ago, and he was sick. I was taking care of him when he was sick before he was tested positive, and I did not get sick at all. I don't know, I feel like I either am asymptomatic or I definitely did have it in Thailand, but I guess we will never know. Well, we could know, because I kind of want to get one of those like blood tests done where you can tell if you have the antibodies, but until then, we will never know. Yeah, I think that's it for this story. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you guys are all healthy and staying safe and just hopefully trying to enjoy the holiday season any way we can. I will see you guys in another video. Bye.